Shortly after I graduated from college, I was 24 years old, living in New Hampshire. It was early spring, and I went to collect my mail. There was this official-looking envelope. I opened it up, and I was trying to make sense of what I was reading. This notice declared that I was now in default on my student loans. I looked at the pile of unopened mail on my desk, and I wondered, could any of those letters have told me that this was coming? I remember standing in my kitchen. I looked out at this bright blue sky, these high winter snowbanks, and these bitter cold winds, and I just felt about as bleak as our long New England winters. I just didn't know how this had happened. And at the time, I knew nothing about default. What I've learned is I now had to pay more fees. I lost my choices in terms of a repayment plan. And my credit score took an impact for several years. My goal in talking to you today is to share how important it is for all of us to live within our means, save a little money, and talk to our loved ones about all of this. Fast forward a couple of years. It's 2000, I'm living in the Boston area. I'm teaching, I'm in love, so I get to share my housing and living expenses, which is great. And I'm paying back my student loans. I have to pay a higher rate on them now. And I look ahead and I think, I'm going to be paying these loans for about 20 more years. Every month, I get these little notices in the mail. And when I think back now on how I made all of those payments, I know that the reason I made those payments was because I taught summer school, I tutored students for the SATs, I looked for higher paying jobs. I was so frustrated by how much time this was taking me to pay back this more than $30,000 sum. It never occurred to me when I went to college and I was 18 years old and I signed on the dotted line that maybe I should think ahead and consider, what's my first year teaching salary going to be? And can I pay back more than $30,000 in student loans on that salary? I just thought to myself, there has to be a way that I can make this different in my life. So fast forward a couple of more years. It's now 2004. I moved to the Happy Valley. I'm married. And I have the opportunity to become an assistant principal in my hometown. And I am not quite sure that I want to leave teaching yet, but I think this is such a great opportunity. I care very deeply about education, and I want to make an impact. So I take a leap, and I move into educational leadership and become an assistant principal. At this point, I have been paying back student loans for nearly 10 years. I still owe almost $20,000. Now I'm frustrated and I'm determined. I look at my finances and I say to my wife, these loans that I have been paying for 10 years are not worth the stress and struggle I have felt. I think if I get really serious about this, I can pay these off in 2 years. Note, 2 important things happened here. The first is I talked to my wife about a goal I had to be debt-free and the financial resources I was going to use to make that happen. If you take nothing else away from what I say today, please go home and talk to someone you love about a goal that you have and the financial resources that you have to make that goal happen. The second important thing that happened that day was I looked at the minimum payments on my student loans, and I knew that that was not going to make this go away. So I said to myself, I'm going to start paying much more than this. So the next month I paid $1,000 to my student loans. And for the next 2.5 years, I paid $1,000 every month. That was a game changer, because then I was student loan debt free. Now I know that $20,000 or $30,000 of student loans is small given today's cost of college. The average American student in 2016 graduates college with more than $30,000 of student loan debt. It took me almost 10 years to pay off less than this. It took me even longer to start to accumulate some kind of savings and maybe even contribute to retirement. What I learned by going through default is that financial mistakes are really hard to recover from. They take a lot of time, they take a lot of work, and they take a lot of difficult conversations. As an educator, I knew that I can't let this happen to other kids if I can find a way to teach people to avoid financial mistakes. The National Council of Financial Educators says that financial literacy is possessing the skills and knowledge to confidently take action to affect positive change. I teach 8th grade. I teach 8th grade math. Every year I teach my students how important it is to live within their means, save a little money, and talk to the people they love about all of that. We start with a computer simulation. So the simulation starts to pair up things that might be possible careers given their interests. It is so fun. My students start to get excited right away, and they start looking at different computer screens of their friends and neighbors, and there's giggles and excitement, and they say, "How much money are you making? Where did you find that job? What do I have to do to get that job?" And they start getting excited. The world is their oyster at 14. Everything's possible. So the next day, we try a different simulation. This one's called reality check. Now they have to go through and start to make choices for the kind of lifestyle they hope to live. Oftentimes, the first time through, they pick the big house, the fancy sports car, lots of vacations. And then they remember the salary that they were earning in that job they picked the day before. So now they have to start to match those two. They go back through the simulation. And they start to make trades. Right? They think about what they really value, what's really important to them. And they start to trade out. Maybe it's not the sports car. Maybe I take the bus or my bike or a small car for a while. They start to think about, can I really afford to go out to eat? Or should I learn how to cook? They have to start to think about how to pace their spending, maybe even postpone some expenses for themselves. This process of balancing how much they're making and how much they're spending is teaching them and training them how to live within their means as they get older. There are only two things that impact our financial situations. One is how much money we earn, and two is how much money we spend. Our bottom line doesn't care if we have $100 more because we earned it or because we saved it. Either way, we're $100 ahead of the game. One of the things that I've learned in doing this with my students is that they have so many questions. They start to think ahead, and they think about, how can I plan to go to college and live within my means? And we open up that conversation so they can start to use these skills of financial literacy in their planning in the next 3, 4, and 5 years. And the questions they ask are great. They have things like, do I have to pay tuition every year, or is that just once? Could it cost me as much to go to college as it could to buy a house? And then they wonder, how much will I save if I live at home? I love that they're starting to think about, how can I live within my means? Kids want to talk about these things. They want to talk about them every day. They want to hear our stories. When I previewed this activity with one of my classes recently, there was an exclamation from a girl in the front row, and she said, "Finally, we get to do something we're actually going to use." And I thought, why am I not required to teach my students who are 14 years old how you can plan for your college costs? Why am I not required to teach you what it costs to buy a car? They're only 2 years away from driving. Why am I not required to help them practice living within their means so that they can save a little bit of money? I recently read an article that said, if your savings account balance is hovering at or below $1,000, you're not alone. Over 50% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. Want to know a secret for how you can be one of the other half of Americans that has $1,000 or more saved up? Save $20 a week. If you save $20 a week, you will have more than $1,000 at the end of the year. If my 8th graders start saving $20 a week now, they will have more than $5,000 when they go to college. If we all start saving $20 a week today, in 10 years we'll have more than $10,000 saved. Only 1/4 of Americans have $10,000 or more in their savings account. Don't we all want the luxury of knowing we have a little bit of money if something goes wrong? What if our car breaks down, or our home needs repair, or we get sick, or someone we love? I learned 2 important things when I paid off my student loans. The first was that $1,000 a month I sent to my student loans. I kept setting that aside each month, and this time I paid it to me. After the first year, I had more than $10,000 in my savings account. I had never been a person who had accumulated savings ever. So this was so exciting. After just a few years, I had more than $20,000 saved. At that time, I had been an assistant principal for 7 years, and I thought, maybe I'd like to go back and teach in the classroom again. I just wasn't sure I was going to be able to afford a $30,000 or $40,000 pay cut to make that happen. So I had to have some difficult conversations again. My wife and I took a look at our finances, her new business. We said, are we going to be able to pay our mortgage, our car, our groceries if I'm making $30,000 less? I felt pretty good about the calculations because you might remember I'm a math teacher. So I knew that the calculations would work, but honestly, I was scared. And it only helped that I had money in the bank. Because I had money saved up, I could take the job I wanted to take, not the job that earned me a particular salary. I'll tell you a funny story about a time when it felt so good to know I was living within my means and I had a little money saved up. My wife and I were at an auction a couple years back, and she's a photographer, so we were mostly there to work. But there was a live auction, and I saw this sailboat ride, and I thought, my parents' anniversary is coming up. This would be a really great gift for them. So what do you think? Could we spend a couple $100s on this? Maybe $350, $400? She said, that sounds great. Let's do it. It'll be fun. So the bidding opens, and the sailboat ride is starting at about $700. So I said, okay, I think we're out of the running on this one. And then the next item up for bid was a house for a week in Wellfleet on the Cape. And the bidding opened at $1,000. So I thought, wow, that's actually a really great deal. You know, it's high season on the Cape, 3-bedroom house near the beach. That would be great. We'd only talked about spending a few $100s tonight. So I was pretty shocked when I heard the auctioneer say, "We have $1,000 from the lady in the front with the camera." I said, "Sandra, what are you doing?" She said, "Relax. I'm just getting the party started. I'm going to get outbid, right? And besides, it's a great deal, right?" So she wins the bid. And she comes over to me with a glass of champagne. And she says, "Do you mind checking us out tonight?" So I remember standing in that line. And the feeling that stayed with me was thinking to myself, how did I get to be this person who has more than $20,000 saved in the bank, and I'm buying a summer vacation on a whim? And I just know that what helped me get to that place was the strong commitment I made to paying down my debts, saving a little money, and talking to the people that I loved about it. When I made that choice to go for that vacation that summer, I had the opportunity to spend time how I wanted to spend my time. I allowed myself the opportunity to have that choice. The worst thing that we can do with our money is nothing. As my students tinker with their choices to earn more and spend less, they learn, like we do, that if we can dedicate time to planning for our hopes and dreams and then organizing our financial resources to get us there, we have learned how to take care of ourselves for a lifetime. Remember, just $20 a week will make a big difference. If you can save $20 a week and have that $1,000 in the bank, it may be the difference between having to make a financial mistake and having a choice. If we can all go home tonight and talk to the people that we love about our hopes and dreams and our financial resources to get us there, we can not only build our bridge to financial freedom, but we can walk ourselves across it. And we can celebrate all the choices we have built for ourselves on the other side. Thank you.